This is TWiT.
So, speaking of sudden movements, Apple, with a little Apple foo, announced that they're going to have, presume, an event March 27th. We were thinking last week, oh, they can't possibly have an event. It's too late now. Well, turns out nobody was looking at Lane Tech College Prep High School in Chicago. Nobody was thinking, is that booked up?
Well, I mean, they built the Steve Jobs Theater, Leo, so obviously they're going to go to Chicago.
But it's an education event. Actually, I love the calligraphy in the Apple on let's take a field trip, it says. And so there's some speculation because of that calligraphy that maybe an Apple Pencil be one of the announcements.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be nice?
I think so.
What would you do to make a better Apple Pencil, though?
Well, it's not just the better Apple Pencil, but it's pushing the Apple Pencil across the iPad line. Right now, the Apple Pencil is restricted to the iPads Pro. And one of the analyst forecasts for this year was that Apple could make the Apple Pencil available widely across the line, especially on the education models, which start at a much, much lower price point.
You don't have to speculate too much on what Apple's going to be talking about because we know that their new class kit will be revealed, debuted with iOS 11.3. So that's any day now. I'm sure that's topic number one on this thing, right?
Yeah, a lot of the problems with iPads in education right now is just simple admin and simple management. So if they simply pitch to the 1 or 3 admins in every school that it'll be so easy to maintain a cart of iPad Pros or iPads from now on, that's going to help them stem the tide against Chromebooks.
Do we know what class kit? Go ahead, Alex.
They're pretty far behind. I mean, so this is one of the few places where I think Apple is really trying to catch up. They are way behind in education, behind Google. I mean, Google has really made the inroads that are that Apple had hoped to make. They came out strong with the iPad, but the Chromebook really has by far, and it really came down to exactly what Andy was talking about, which is administration turned out to be one of the big things. I mean, having a computer that kids can type on is part of it, but a big piece of it is when the iPads came out, they were just a disaster to administer for thousands of users. Just didn't work at all for the way schools work.
Do we think? Go ahead.
Just another quick problem is that, another quick advantage of the Chromebook is that most of the schools that are using Chromebooks, the Chromebook is just a wrapper for the Google Education software, and that software that they don't have that they can deploy on a number of different legacy hardware that they have. They can also have some expectation that the kids' homes are going to have something that can run. If it runs a web browser, you can run these apps. So they just provided a much tidier and much more flexible solution. So and I was curious to see if they were going to make a big push back towards education. I don't think they'd ever abandon it, but it seemed as one of the things they seemed to be doing to address all of this was to pivot the iPad a little bit more towards enterprise. They just had, for instance, they've been really, really closely tied to IBM, for instance, providing apps and services to make iPads work much better for specific business purposes. I think just today, there was a news release that they're integrating IBM Watson development, their AI development into iOS as part of iOS's own machine learning system, so that if you've developed a model that uses IBM Watson, there's a very, very easy way or easy-ish way to convert that model so it'll work with iOS, so that you can have that business app working very, very well on an iPad as well. So it's very, very good to see that not only are they finding it would have been nice if they've simply found 20 minutes during a keynote to talk about education. It's even better that they're saying, no, we're actually holding an event in Chicago at a school, and we're making this the entire theme of the presentation. That's the sort of stuff you like to see. You like to see that that's helps to convince you that they are still very, very excited and interested in education, as opposed to simply not willing to give up that part of the market yet.
Will we see hardware, Rene? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the rumor is that we'll see a new version of the low-cost iPad. Last year's was a bit of an iPad Air 1.5. It didn't have the laminated screen, but it had some of the other features that the iPad Air 2 did. And the rumor is that will get updated, and maybe the price will get pushed down a little bit further, but it's still a total cost of ownership equation for Apple. For example, when you get the Chromebook, you get the screen, you get the keyboard. With the iPad, they have discounted keyboards they do in partnership with Logitech, but that still adds to the total price of the iPad. And if you add an Apple Pencil to it, it adds to the total price of the iPad. And then if you want to do things with HDMI or VGA, you have to buy dongles, and that adds to the total price of the. I mean, dongles at scale is still expensive. So just the price starts creeping up. And then there's a couple other issues too, like Apple. Google's ID management isn't perfect. For example, if you get a school ID with Google, then you leave that school, you lose that ID. And a lot of people have lost accounts that were just connected to those IDs. But at least they make it super simple to spin one up, to get all the email and contact management and calendars with it, to get access to docs and things, where Apple still has a lot of legacy systems with disparate logins. And it's very hard. You can add email, you can add user accounts, but they don't necessarily have email with them. Then you can increase the storage if you want to. So throughout the entire chain, I think the hardware in some ways will be the easy part for Apple, and the classroom software and things like Swift will be the easy be the easy part. But the glue that holds it all together, from creating the accounts to having iWork really work as something that can be, Google Docs-ish or Microsoft Office-ish, because Google goes out of their way, it seems sometimes, not to make Docs a great experience on the iPad, and then just having everything else that the students can count on. I mean, Google is pretty good at protecting the privacy of kids, but it's also indoctrinating all these kids into using Google services, which means that once they leave school, they'll be handing over vast amounts of data. So to me, it's critical to have competition in this area and to have options. But I think until Apple decides to treat education like an end-to-end product, a completely differentiated and very good experience, it's going to be a bit of a piecemeal thing.
It is kind of now. They've got a classroom app that's a couple of years old, but really seems more about managing multiple iPads in a classroom.
They have iTunes U, but it's not really connected. And then they have the new like Swift Playgrounds, but it's not really connected to anything.
Swift Playgrounds seems to me the best thing they've got, really, for school.
Yeah.
Well, they can make a compelling argument that in the midst of Google Docs has a huge advantage, but Google's not really addressing code as a primary language, which is something that's very near and dear to Tim Cook's heart. And if they could provide a product that essentially worked with iWork and iLife, also a lot of companies don't have an iLife equivalent that just gave you a more well-rounded
that's the problem.
Than just a Docs
a school's not going to buy a bunch of iPads just for the coding class.
Yes.
It needs to be a full
or GarageBand or any. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.